Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have another very special guest. He is Michael, the co-founder of Swamp Audio. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a little early, but we're getting going.
So I don't know too much about the project, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious to know what music, what relevancy music or even audio in general has in terms of how that can be used with blockchain technology. So why don't you share with us what Swamp Audio actually is and what prompted you to create this project, particularly on the blockchain?
Sure. One important thing to know is that Swamp Audio is sort of the new reincarnation of the brand, and we've been operating as Swamp Music since 2013 as a music publisher / music label, mostly in the electronic music space. So we've got about 40 releases out from hundreds of different artists. So some are compilation works with over 40 tracks on them. From visual artists to audio artists, sometimes 3D artists all coming together on a collaborative work. So we have a little bit of history in rights management, distributing royalties on the classical level, and publishing media. So we got into the NFT scene. I'm an artist, and I tried, selling some of my works and trying different blockchains. And I found that the entire scene across different blockchains was lacking. There's a lot of just like the rights management aspect of it and the contractual obligation aspect of it wasn't quite there to hold up in court or to really if there was ever a problem with the artist's work, there's really no way to challenge it or deal with it. And the idea with blockchain is, financial freedom. We're trying to get away from centralized entities and, give power back to the people. So in some sense, the project is trying to kind of bridge that gap between what we already know and, the space that doesn't quite have the information that we have. It's sort of a synergy. We're trying to learn as much as we can at the same time as produce as much as we can using our existing expertise. So we're currently just starting in the blockchain space in terms of what we're doing with this new web content management system and NFT royalty tracking scheme. So that is kind of a big all-encompassing thing. So maybe we can go over that in another question. But the general history of Swamp Music and then now Swamp Audio is that we've been kind of representing independent artists for a long time, and we want to keep doing that. But this new Web 3.0 space is a little dangerous, and so we're trying to kind of make as much effort as we can to make it a little bit of a safer place and to create easy tools for those artists and fans to work together before the big centralized players start coming into this space and start trying to set their standards.
Right. Well, before we continue further on the project and how it intertwines with blockchain, is there any context you can give us on how traditionally music publishing and kind of like artist intellectual property and things of that nature, how that functions, so we have more of like a grounded understanding of what it is like in the sort of traditional sense, and
Sure.
that way we can understand sort of like the solutions blockchain offers. Sure.
So there's generally two different routes you can go with media publication. You can go with a self-distributed publication, or you can go with a through a music label or a rights management company to distribute. So you have to weigh your benefits and your risks on both sides, because when you have a label or a rights management group, they take profit because they need to operate their overhead. But they also offer certain things like legal protection and representation. So I'm always constantly, less now than I used to be, because our work isn't often pirated. It's a little bit more niche, but the DMCA stuff, digital money. So someone puts our work on YouTube and tries to monetize it with their own advertisements. Technically that's a strike. We can go ahead and say, hey, that's our work. You divert those advertisement payouts, which is pennies on the dollar, to us instead of whoever is trying to monetize our work. So, in that sense, like the labels, rights management, they offer some sort of protection, but they take like 50% usually, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then on top of that, once you're distributed, so this is the rights management company in between the artist and the platforms. So you have Spotify, Tidal, iTunes. Those are the platforms, digital streaming platforms, DSPs. You have the rights management companies or labels. Sometimes it's even a label in between the artist and the rights management company. So there's percentages being taken off the top pretty much everywhere. You have Tidal and Spotify and all of them. They take, they basically pay you 0.0001 cents per stream. If you're Spotify, 0.007 cents if you're Tidal. So Tidal pays a lot more than the other ones, but it's still, micro pennies. And then whatever you get from that stream, the rights management company comes and takes their part. The label comes and takes their part. And by the time that profit gets to the artist, it's like nothing. And so an artist needs to get like hundreds of thousands of streams or millions of streams in order to actually support themselves with that kind of income. So that's kind of like the classic route. And then self-distributed is a little bit more risky because you have to be your own manager. So if I go to a website like DistroKid or CD Baby, I can actually take my music, put it through their service, fill out the metadata form, and distribute it myself to those platforms, Tidal, Spotify, and whomever. But then, there's still a middleman, CD Baby or DistroKid or whomever takes their 20% off the top of everything. So there's ups and downs to both sides of it. And, there's websites like Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a like independent label distribution and artist distribution website. They take their 15% off the top, but they also host your entire catalog. So again, there's ups and downs, whether you want to host your own website or not, whether you want to have a pre-hosted gallery that you just pay 15% off the top because you're not making any sales, So in that sense, that's kind of the classic model. You have, independent distribution, and then you have, classical distribution, so to speak. Now, you can technically like release music like to your own independent Bandcamp or SoundCloud without going through any sort of a digital streaming platform or rights management company. But the way that monetization works is that you get these codes, not dissimilar to hash identifiers, but they're just unique identifiers for each song. And then an album, if it contains multiple songs, you have a unique identifiers for each one. And then you have kind of, whether or not you're on this label or that label, or you move your song from this label to independent because you have full control over that as the artist, usually, unless you sign a contract, then the code stays the same. So the idea is that the rights organization is sort of acting as a layer 2 that tracks these codes for music and even books and video too. So these codes are given out for all different types of media. And then those codes sort of just track things worldwide. So you can say, oh, it's on YouTube. I'm using this code on YouTube, this code on Spotify, so I can see who's streaming it, where they're streaming it. Because these days you don't really get paid out so much money. They're trying to provide you more data streams, which is valuable to the right type of people. So yeah, so that's kind of classic distribution. And to reel it back to where blockchain can help this process. Well, in my opinion, having someone in between, the artist and the streaming platforms, or the artist and the fans, that's saying, hey, we'll provide these codes. We're checking the monetization and we'll follow up on everything. That's a little bit too centralized, and it offers things like, algorithms that can take down, someone who's playing music on their Twitch stream where it's literally them performing the music, but it's them performing a popular song. So the popular song gets caught on the algorithm, they get muted. There's all sorts of like bad things about the centralization, but then a lot of musicians would tell you that, well, we're not making much money, and if someone pirates my music, then I don't have any way to stop them. So I like having rights management companies, but it's really, they don't have any other way. They don't know any other way. There's like a Stockholm syndrome. So, and there's also a lot of skepticism from the music scene about Web3 and NFTs in general. So where we're kind of making moves is to establish a presence in the Web3 space for audio, first of all. And second of all, to create tools and frameworks for artists to collaborate and work together and actually mint release works with contractual obligations between each other. And by doing so, we can create sort of an independent framework where there are still responsible parties involved in the contract, but it is still happening in a decentralized way. So there's also the immutability. So, you have blockchain records of sale. A lot of, like, for instance, I actually was on a distributor for a long time that was pushing our music to iTunes for us. I uploaded it, they uploaded it, they make their percent, I make my percent, whatever. And every single quarter, financial quarter, I have to call this guy and say, hey, where's the statistics? Where's the payout? Like, isn't this supposed to be automated? And he's like, oh, sorry, bro, there's a technical glitch. Oh, there's a bug. Oh, our system was down. Which is not true, like 100% of the time. He's just, whatever he's doing, it's a little shady. And there's no real transparency there, because at the end of the day, the middlemen have the power because they're distributing the money to the people. And they can fudge the records, they can fudge the numbers. MySQL databases are mutable. So we're looking at blockchain as a really big solution to a lot of problems in the music industry, but it needs to be done very, very carefully and correctly. And there's been projects that have built on top of Ethereum, and look at what is happening right now. So, we're trying to approach it in as safe a light as we can, but we still have to make moves as fast as we can now, because there's a lot of projects that are starting in this space, and we see a lot of hype more than a lot of tech. And when it comes down to it, we're trying to protect artists, and a lot of other blockchains, they're inefficient. A lot of other companies are too big. They have overhead, they have stock investors, they have angel investors. So we're trying to create a community invested project so that we don't have to pay back some big corporate funded hedge fund to start our project, so that it can stay community run the entire time. And that's the benefit to being on Ergo, I think, because Ergo is a very community run project, and, we're big fans of it.
Well, that's a lot. Yeah. So how do NFTs, how does that play a part in the business model? I know the benefits of immutability and all that, but how does it work when you're trying to distribute music or audio in general? Are there multiple duplicates of the NFTs? Are they created based on demand?
In general, the current state of NFTs, like I said, is very lacking. And there's what you have, like fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. You have something that can be created over and over and over and over again. And then you have something that there's really only like one copy of, and then you can resell it. There needs to be different kind of options available to the artists in what they want to do and how they distribute their music, because a non-fungible token is, to me, that's when someone is uploading the highest resolution quality of their file possible that they could produce, that's used in a movie or a video game. Like, it needs to be high resolution. It can't be an MP3 file. So if my opinion is that the finished work that is of the highest resolution should be minted as the non-fungible media. And then any like lower resolution copy that's used in other works, or specifically like playlisted or sent to streaming, would be like a slightly lower resolution export that is a fungible copy that can be distributed to fans upon purchase. So we're looking at different models right now, because currently, I guess to put it in layman's terms, there's not enough scarcity to this high resolution audio, because music, the whole scene has basically turned musicians into like, oh, I have to release, months and months and months of my work for like $1.50 and barely even sell anything of it. So we're trying to kind of introduce new models with musicians and offer them like the scarcity model, where it's like, hey, you can distribute to fiat systems. If you do so, we can charge a little bit more for it and incentivize people to start using decentralized currency. And then still, basically there's, if there's a high resolution file, there's a need for it. Someone's buying it, and if they're buying it, they're going to buy it whether it's $5, $10, or $20, because they need the high resolution file. If you want to hear the file, regardless, you can just go to Spotify or YouTube, Google Music, any of those, and hear it. So like, we're trying to kind of differentiate the average listener who should get a certain quality for free, and then the professional user who should have to pay for the use case of the work.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that is very interesting. So one quick question, going back to the traditional way that business is conducted for music, between the distributors and the labels and all of that. Do you think that was grandfathered in exactly that model, exactly the same way it's always been? And that kind of has like a direct conflict with the way music is distributed now, but the models are still the same, meaning that, before people would go to a record store, people would go to physically buy something, they would have to put in the effort, and they oftentimes would find other musicians along the same category and hang around. It would be more of a social experience, right? I assume
Yeah, it's true.
So I hear, but that model, at least from an outsider's perspective, doesn't seem to have been updated to the model of clicks or listens on Spotify, and
Well,
now you're getting screwed on kind of both fronts. Am I right about that?
it sort of has and it hasn't, right? And I'm in my 30s, so I can't I can't speak to like what came before me in the industry. There's lots of music history that came before me. My dad's been in the music industry for a long time. I've got an opinion about some of it, but in the 60s and 70s, when you had like a record label or a publication company, generally, what they're doing is scouting and finding artists, because there's not a lot of global networks that these artists can collaborate on. There's no like digital media, the social media. So it was literally kind of a job to go out and find artists, go to clubs, listen to people, and it was a industry. So
Yeah.
an industry was built on that. They became tastemakers. So tastemakers like set like, oh, we're going to release an album that sounds like this for this reason at this time, from this artist. So like, approach a big artist and say like, hey, we want a pop album at, June to release for Q2 so that we can get X profits for, whatever. So it's like a hybridization, right? You had like the musicians who really wouldn't have had global exposure at that time without these entities, and then the entities profiting off of it and building actually tooling, like, oh, we have a worldwide record consumption industry now, so now let's build more record presses. Let's get the supply chain going for more vinyl distribution from wherever we get vinyl going from. So the whole industry like blew up, and like most industries, they blow up to a certain point and then they kind of plateau, and then the value starts to get squeezed because everyone has all the same tools, everyone knows all the same secrets, and so now there's no more expansion. So now it's just squeezing. When that squeezing happens, all the biggest, most bloated people get squeezed out. Now, usually that's what happens. Unfortunately, in the music industry, the biggest, most bloated players figured out a way to squeeze the artists instead. And so what's happening is the artists are producing a lot of media. Musicians pretty much have to make music, whether they're getting paid for it or not, they're just going to. So,
Right.
this is capitalized upon. And when it's, it's done in this kind of like the current shareholder economy. Musicians literally get almost nothing, and it kind of like messes with me in my head that like I can go outside and see like a musician on the street who's awesome and like blowing my mind, but he's homeless and like doesn't have a place to go, and I'm like, why? Like there needs to be something better, I think, and so decentralization, blockchain, I think, has a lot of potential here, to really just take away the siphon, that's right in the middle right now.
Do you feel that there is enough attention given to this idea of taking out middlemen as much as possible for the sake of transparency in the Web3 space? Because I personally feel there's just a lot of attention put on all of these speculative assets, venture capitalist backed cryptocurrencies. Then everybody's surprised when they have downtime like Solana, or they just go bust like Terra. And it feels like everybody's chasing profits, but not really emphasizing the technology that could actually revolutionize certain industries in this world.
So,
do you feel the same way?
Yes and no. I think that there's a lot of hype and trying to capitalize on that hype. There always has been in the music industry. Like wherever there is someone who wants to consume something, there's going to be someone who wants to produce that thing that's being consumed. So that's just standard economy. But there are like large groups that want this, like the the College of Music Berkeley Open Music Initiative, which is sort of like a collaboration between MIT and Berkeley. It's like, how do we use open source technology to create a transparent like metadata layer for music and royalties tracking? So their mission is 100% in alignment, and it has been for like the past decade. We're 100% in alignment with them. The issue is with a lot of these, for instance, they released a paper in 2019 that pretty much lays out exactly what you need to do with blockchain to do things in a transparent manner for royalties. But it was completely theoretical because they based it on the Ethereum blockchain and Ethereum gas fees, and in general, the layer twos on Ethereum don't operate. I don't know enough about Ethereum to speak about it with this expertise, right. But I just feel like at its current state and at the state it's been, the fee model, and it's kind of like half open source and non, like the developers have all the control. It's not the right chain for the job. And they realized this at the Open Music Initiative because they said, this is theoretical, but looking at their paper, it is completely possible with something like Ergo and Sigma protocols, because you have such a dynamic and strong smart contract language with something so cheap and easy underneath it, and community run. You can't really get more perfect than that, in my opinion, for something that should be open source, tracking money and music for the people. So yeah, there are groups out there that want this, and what I think is that you kind of have to have, like I said before, you kind of have to act fast when the time is right, but not act too fast that you act on something like Ethereum and it's the wrong product.
Right.
So like building the hype up when the time is right is important, because without hype, you don't grow your product. And it's important. Like that's why marketing people are a thing. That's why graphic designers get paid. They're good at what they do. It's like drawing people in. But I guess why we are like slightly different than these other projects that are doing that right now is because we're building specifically on Ergo and have been researching more of the cryptography and the smart contract side of how to do this right. And again, we're a very small company, very agile and very bootstrapped. So don't really, have a lot of investors to pay back or anything, no investors to pay back. We don't have, a huge team to pay or shareholders or anything. So like right now it's possible to have a pretty much completely community run project. with a little bit of advisory, because I've run a label, my people have worked in this market before. So staying on the team as the advisor to the community project up until the community feels confident running itself. So like, I think that if you're going to do something open source for people, it needs to stay true to that. And I just see a lot of, again, over capitalization of a good idea. A good idea being using blockchain to track royalties, but then how do we get our own fee model on top of this to like pay out like our 20 people their 300 grand salary every year,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that you're trying to use a Windows 95 computer or Windows 98, and you're like, hey, how do we order pizza and have the delivery driver do it for us, all without calling? How can we save our information and know it's actually transparently, protected, and continue reordering that pizza? That type of pioneering ideas that we saw in the late 90s with the advent of the personal, the widespread distribution of personal computers, and just trying to use the internet for different things that theoretically were possible, but nobody had successfully done on a mass scale. I feel like a lot of the interviews that I do is kind of like that, just for Web3. It's kind of like everything is there in principle. Now we just have to bring everything together and almost like retrofit our ideas and our innovative ideas as well into this new thing, where it's also constantly in flux. It's fluid. Like you said, 5 years ago, Ethereum would have been the perfect model for what you're talking about. And then as it tried to scale, we see, oh, wait, we have to move on to better technology or a better personal computer that can do more. That's how I kind of feel with what you're saying. So even if you weren't doing it, it would be inevitable to somebody to come into the space and do it in the way that you're perceiving, because it fundamentally makes more sense from what I'm understanding than the traditional way of normally doing these things. Because the majority of artists, I'm sure you would agree, aren't compensated fairly for the work. I mean, that's kind of like an idea.
99% of them.
99%. So that's a gripe as old as the industry itself. People, oh, this guy stole my tune, or Elvis Presley stole this from that person. Oh, sorry, you signed it over for $150. Didn't you know your label? And kind of all of that mistrust, right?
Yeah. And record labels have too much, or I mean, I guess classic record labels. I say this knowing that we were a record label, but if you are one of our artists or knew us, like, we were giving really fair percentages, and we always worked with artists in a really like fair and dynamic way. So I don't consider ourselves like a classic label. Right. A lot of these labels basically own the music, and some of it never gets released because, oh, this is, we signed it from this artist, but it's we don't think it'll sell, so it's just gonna sit on the shelf forever. And then so the artist never gets to see it on their platform, or share it with their, they could share it with their family or whomever, but it's like, or sell CDs, but technically them selling CDs of their own work would be illegal at that point. Wow. So there's the problem here, right? So like, we're trying to really set standards. So in my opinion, like you said, technology changes, and like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who knows if Ergo is going to be the right thing. But what we do think is that Sigma protocols and the smart contract models that Ergo is built in principle upon is probably going to stick around, or things like it, with cryptographic proofs and, consensus proofs. So in that light, whether it's Ergo or another chain that uses a very similar protocol and way to use smart contracts, as long as we can mint like works in the right way to a smart contract and track those royalties on a blockchain, the mission will be successful, and we'll have cross-chain collaboration. There will be oracles that can look across chains. But, until that point, there's a lot of adoption that needs to come. And, And again, the reason why we're building on Ergo is because right now it is the right chain for the job. It's the strongest chain hands down in the space. And we do see it lasting longer than 5-10 years as a chain,
Yeah.
but we, again, preparing for our entire brand and our entire fan base and our entire artist base, moving into a crypto space or decentralized project is a very big and risky thing, so we want to, let people know we're not just moving into a single crypto coin. We're going into intellectual property in the blockchain space to make sure that people get fairly compensated and can track their things in a transparent manner. So that's the ultimate goal. And Ergo is currently the right chain for that goal.
Right. Yeah, I would assume that down the line you'll be able to import as well, if nothing else, or at least have the interoperability between chains that is sophisticated enough to be able to read what you've built on Ergo onto a different chain. I mean, the rosin bridge and all of these different things being worked on are supposed to also help with that. So in terms of future proofing yourself and the work that you do now and laying the seeds on Ergo, it seems that regardless of what happens, as long as we approach this very precious gift of Ergo that is also very fragile early on, like any experiment, it seems like you picked the right one. In my opinion, I've looked at hundreds of cryptocurrencies over the past few years, and there are great there are ones that do a single thing in a great way, or a handful of things, but in order to have like the sandbox effect that Ethereum had, while trying to take away a lot of the top-down bureaucracies of Ethereum. Sorry, it is what it is, and try to keep Bitcoin's first principles at the front, but also like not turn it into a religion where we don't want to innovate past anything else. We want to, Bitcoin serves this use case well. They don't want to change it easily for obvious reasons, but we need the best of all of these different technologies and just put them into one thing and have like really smart people do it, but also understand, hey, you're not probably going to make a ton of money if you do it this way either, because if you're going to make it open and fair and everybody has to mine it fairly and the foundation is a nonprofit, well, you're kind of working on a voluntary basis in order to foster in a new wave of innovation and growth. And for projects like yourself, that they come and they say, wow, there's a lot here, everything's new, but you have the confidence to say, hey, like the technology is really there, and we're not going to have a rug pull of insider trading or weird stable coin pegs being like, oh, if you take a UST, you'll burn a Luna, and if you burn a Luna, you'll get a UST and all that crap. So I think you guys are on the right track now. Who are the other members of your team, and what do they do currently?
Sure. I'm going to hold on to that for just a second, and I really attached to something that you said there about Bitcoin,
Sure.
about how it's not easy to change. And that's true. And that's good in some senses. But I think something that we don't really realize as smart people who do things in tech is that we're still human, and human systems are not quite in practice as perfect as they are in theory. And so when you have something like Bitcoin, it's a great theory in practice, and it doesn't quite hold up in certain aspects, right? Because of that. So we have contract law, and contract law is a malleable thing. You have laws that are set in stone, and it's very opinionated. You have this law is interpreted this way by this judge, and you say, oh, this law was interpreted by this way to that judge, and that judge then considers it. So it's a very malleable system based upon regional interpretation, based upon personal interpretation, religious interpretation. And so when you have a system that agrees between two people how to do something, that system itself needs to be able to change. A contract cannot be set in 100% stone forever, because it needs to be able to be brought in front of a judge in case of an act of God or some random thing that you can't predict, because we're humans on planet Earth. That contract needs to be able to be changed in some way. And so that's why the current state of NFTs and crypto is not quite there yet, because we don't have a way to have assignment provision on the work, which, is having a good will actor on the good faith of the body of the work and the artists, that presented it, which is usually the rights organizations, local jurisdictions, what have you.
Right. Okay.
That's a really, I just wanted to put that out there. So my team. So right now it's a very small team. We have me, my marketing lead, Ryan, who I worked with at my previous career. He's a really, really awesome branding manager. He's done work for eBay and StubHub, Live Nation. So he's worked in like the sort of like ticket sales and presentation and publication side of sort of big brands. And then I've got a full stack sort of dev engineer helping me with sort of like front end to back end API communications and building up the back end. His name's Alex. He currently has his own, kind of job going. So this is sort of his side thing. He's working for Code for America, where they're building like access tools for like low income people to get on food stamps and get public access programs all through one web portal instead of having to go to a bunch of different websites and stuff. That's right. He does really cool stuff in that sense too. And then I'm currently talking to one or two more people in the smart contract side of things to see if they want to be kind of like permanent team members or if they just want to do contract work for us. So it's a small team, but we're able to be really agile. Me and Ryan both worked on a team for a $1 billion publicly traded entity, and we know how to kind of run really big campaigns in a really lean manner with very little or no budget. So, we also have a lot of working history together and work well together. So as far as our team, it's small. We're growing a little bit, but not going to bring too many people on because, again, we want to keep our overhead low and we want to stay lean.
Got it. When did Swamp Audio get into the Ergo platform? When did you really begin with this goal and vision? So
the label itself started in 2013, and I personally missed buying Bitcoin back in like 2010.
Everybody did. Don't feel bad.
So like I've been watching the crypto space for a long time and seeing like when I saw Ethereum, I was like, oh, that's not going to end well. And I was, like I think we're all being proven right now at that kind of thought, if that's what your thought was. But it, I've always been sort of like a foundation guy, and so looking at like the crypto projects out there, I'm like, these don't quite do it yet. These don't quite do it yet. And so Ergo came along and started to research Ergo. I'm a miner. I have a GPU rig, and I'm starting to try different algorithms out there. Find Ergo, find it to be the best algorithm for my Radeon 590. So I'm like, okay, great. Let's do Ergo for a little while. And then I'm like, wow, this is a really stable algorithm. I'm getting paid out from it. Like, what's up with this coin? I started researching it. The more you dive into the rabbit hole with Ergo with an open mind, I think the more you'll find that is just answering all your questions. If you really do read the documentation and really, it does cover everything pretty much. And if you don't understand it, you can ask the questions to literally the founder of the platform in Discord, and he'll answer you. I think that's a really valuable thing, and it's something that you don't find these days, and it's probably not going to last for long in terms of the kind of community thing we've got going on right now. So, it's got great energy. This Ergo community has like such powerful energy, and like we've been in the festival scenes and seen like different sorts of tribes emerge and the kind of energy that they have. And there's just something special about Ergo amongst all the other communities. That's just kind of like why we decided to start in the scene. And also, again, I started minting my own NFTs on Ergo this year in 2022. And I just wasn't quite satisfied with the experience and saw that, okay, based upon my own knowledge of contract law and copyright law, that currently the royalty tracking through the registers isn't quite there. So let's start, I was like, how can I integrate my world with this blockchain space that I think Ergo is the right doorway into? And then my world, where I've got a bunch of artists and people just connected to me that could benefit from Ergo. Like, how do we do this, right? And
Right.
so yeah, we started during the Ergo Hack competition, really like saying, okay, we're going to develop a platform that replaces our Bandcamp. That was the first thing. We're going to replace our Bandcamp and then add Ergo functionality to buy music with Ergo. And it should be like the first, like, buy non NFTs with Ergo type of thing. And we did that. We built a new website. It looks better than Bandcamp. On the back end, it works better than Bandcamp. It does more. And we succeeded in developing a little button that lets you buy an album with Ergo,
Oh,
and then
wow.
download that album from our website rather than it being an NFT you get from the blockchain. And so once we started doing that, we were getting a lot of support from the community in the Ergo space saying, hey, this is a great idea. What's the plan to take it further? And, I've sort of always had these ideas like, how do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? And sort of the Ergo Hack competition really brought it all together and coalesced it into one kind of like, oh, wow, okay, I can use my existing record label. We can use Ergo, build a DAO on top of it, and make it community run. And that is the best chance that we have, I think, if we act now, because there are there's a lot of interest in Web3 right now. And the you know, big players in the space, I think, are going to come in really, really soon. And it's not going to be good if they get here before there are standards developed. So,
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, you kind of, again, organic growth is a very scarce thing to find anymore. If it is organic growth, it usually doesn't go anywhere, the protocol. And if there isn't organic growth, it's kind of like, hey, we're gonna have a first mover approach. We're gonna put a bunch of you know, news bulletins up there, get exchange listings and all that, and get all the hype. But at the end of the day, like nobody actually uses the chain apart from like a few venture capitalists back things. Like I don't know. So it's very difficult to emulate what Bitcoin had originally in a space of thousands of cryptocurrencies. I remember Joseph Armenia, the business manager for Ergo, explaining, look, trying to emulate the organic growth and decentralized manner of Bitcoin to the in the purest form possible in today's age is so difficult because Bitcoin was literally the pioneer. There was not even a crypto exchange for that. There was no competition. Exchanges were built around Bitcoin eventually. Now you're trying to have compete with thousands of cryptocurrencies. You're not necessarily marketing it the way you would a normal business, right? You're not necessarily having all the funds that and a lot of the shortcuts that having big investors behind you afford you as a blockchain. And you also have to hope that miners, community members, developers all want to see this prosper. And it's a really tough thing. So, you have all the tech, but you don't necessarily have all of the eyes on it. But to your point, like growing in this way allows it to probably have more standards before it can get perverted by an external party that really doesn't give a shit about Ergo and just wants to use it for their own exploitation to some degree, whether that be just pump and dumping, Erg on Qcoin, or claiming they're going to build something huge in like an Ergo hack. There's not a whole lot of transparency. The teams aren't small. They're just coming in. They're building a lot of hype, and at the end of the day, maybe they just get a bunch of Erg into their smart contracts and they have it in their wallet, and oh well, the project goes bust. Just like we're seeing around in the space with a bunch of things. So I think you're right. I think the organic approach is probably the best one. There's a lot of confidence in it. And a lot of it is the willpower of the people over anything else. I don't think anybody here is inherently in it for money first and foremost. They're more like, except for minors, of course, uh, but most of us are here because we feel like the future is going to be brighter than the past with Ergo, and and the tech is there, of course, which helps a tremendous amount when you're looking at documentation and stuff and saying, hey, like if we could get some of these other things together over time, we know we have a solid foundation in terms of the tech beneath it all, right? So
yeah, and I'm like, so one thing, Armenio says all the time, and we are in 100%, 1,000,000% agreement, is like, know your risks, manage your risks in this space. Know your assumptions going into something like cryptocurrency. I still say that cryptocurrency in general is, don't put in more than you can afford to lose, because we're not currently at the global stage of having a safety net like there is with federal banking infrastructure. And you can say that the federal banking infrastructure safety net is kind of going away, and that's true. So that's why crypto is being adopted more and more and more. But at the end of the day, everyone has to manage their risks and realize that anything could happen. The internet could turn off tomorrow if there's another world war. We have to be sure that don't put your life savings into this thing. But at the same time, we believe in counter economic systems. We believe that there's room to grow like massive amounts of communities and businesses in this space, and that as long as the electrical power is there for people to mine, and the copper wire exists for people to connect their computers together, that there will be GPU mining, and that there will be people doing this. And so it's very, very hard to stop. And that's kind of our opinion. But it's still a system that's built on top of computers, and still built on top, there could be an EMP tomorrow from the sun. We don't know. So that's why, we always said at Swamp Music, like if the internet turned off tomorrow, we would mail CDs to people. Like we'd get an actual like physical mailing list going, and we'd keep an operation in some way, shape, or form. So that's kind of like the divergent evolution, like the opposite evolution of like, if things go bad, we'll mail CDs, but if things go great, we'll be using blockchain to track everything transparently.
Right. So how do your artists feel about the initiative you guys have taken to try to get their music on the blockchain?
Some are very skeptical and some are very open. There's I'd say it's more on the skeptical side. I have probably a few people that have expressed concerns to me, more so because they don't understand that I'm more versed in this space than they are. So they're more so concerned about, oh, you're building on top of Ethereum, look what happened here. And it's like, oh, no, we're not building on top of Ethereum, we're building on top of Ergo, and we're doing things a little bit differently. So yeah, there is a lot of concern. I'd say that people are approaching it cautiously. And there are those who have worked with me for many years who trust me and who know that I'm not going to put their work in any sort of risk.
Right.
But it's difficult because, again, there's a lot of hype out there, and there's a lot of companies that are saying, hey, I'll distribute your music to blockchain, or hey, I'll track your royalties. And so musicians make music just like bees make honey. They're going to. It's just a natural product of who they are. And humans just harvest honey. They don't really care so much about bees, right? And bees are dying off. So it's similarly like musicians make music. They're gonna make music. So there's systems out there, a lot of Web 2.0 systems, a lot of classical industry just harvests it. They're like, oh, people are going to make music. Let's harvest that and make as much profit off it as we can. The bees don't need much. They're going to do it anyway. Yeah. So.
Right. How many? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No. Finish your thought, and then I'll ask.
I guess to finish up my thought on that one, there's just the business model as it is how can we extract value from these people and their work? And that is the fundamental thing that needs to change, I think, because of digital systems and Web3 and where we are right now with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that, rather than how can we extract value, how can we create value between these people, you know?
Right.
And so that's kind of where we're at, where our heads are at.
Yeah. What what type of politicking goes on behind the scenes with, like, for example, music labels when they take on new artists? Are they always going to come out with either a net positive or at least we try type of thing, or do they actually lose money if they take a risk on an artist, or does it was like, oh, whatever, it's all digital, they didn't sell, who cares?
So again, yeah, time changes everything, right? So, when 60s and 70s, people were making physical media to give out, like physical CDs, physical vinyls,
Right.
physical tapes. There was a lot more, I guess, friendly politicking, where you have like whole industries that are just created from like releasing a track. It's not just releasing a track, it's selling tapes. The tapes are magnetic strips and plastic casings. It's like whole industries. And then we go into digital music. And so suddenly everything is available. I don't need to have a physical copy. We don't need to go into a supply chain to get it printed or get it made. And so the politics switched, right, from like, let's find really, really good music and really like amazing artists to promote them and make them a worldwide phenomenon, to let's sign as many artists as we can for as little as possible, unless they're really, really, really amazing and have like Kanye West style, stuff. And we'll sign as many as possible and hope one will get big. So that's kind of where the market is right now. It's with this distribution model, or with this aggregation distribution model. It's essentially just like, yeah, we'll sign you, bring your music on. And that dilutes the market, from like,
Right.
there's a lot of music, in my opinion, that is not quite done, or not quite up to the caliber that it should be amongst a catalog and playlist with some of these other artists. But right now we're at a point where no one really has the bandwidth, so to speak, to like enjoy music in this high resolution way, like outside of their earbuds, so to speak. Because when you have small speakers, it's fine. Like literally compression on audio, it's literally compressing a waveform down so that it can come through a smaller diaphragm. And so the earbud phenomenon is great. You can shrink music down real small and send it to people. It doesn't cost a lot of bandwidth. And then, people still enjoy it because they're not really paying too much attention. They're working out, they're working on their computer, they're hearing it, but they're not really experiencing it.
Yeah.
And so coming from a family like who worked in the audio industry, building speakers, and family of musicians, like I've always been about the musical experience, like those little intricate details that you can't really hear unless you're really there, or like really representing the music in a good way. So yeah, politics, right? They need to change as time changes. And Web 2.0 was like the dark ages of music, in my opinion. Hopefully we can change that with Web 3 and bring the politicking back, so it's not between a label and a person to see the world. It's just between the world and the person, if they want to see it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how. I think blockchain can help solve a few of the issues you highlighted, but a lot of the issues of attention span and dilution of kind of the amount of artists you can actually listen to. It's, I think for an artist, it is quite difficult. It has to be amazingly, extraordinarily difficult if you're not compensated properly for even when 100 people hear your stuff, which, back in the day would have been more of a big deal in the physical location. I don't think the human mind can really digest so much music if there's so many artists, that the barrier to entry has been reduced so much, and
Yeah.
it's kind of open like the floodgates. It's really, I can't even begin to wrap my head around just like the isolation of music as well, just like having it in your earbuds, other people not being able to even catch a whiff of that and ask you about it, just kind of the social aspects of that. And like, and then you get into like music that would be most profitable generally would probably be something that would be used in a social gathering, right, in a party. So I kind of see how, you know, we push more on that front
Utility.
as people, utility, yeah, on that utility of just like, hey, party music is where you have to make it. And if you try to make something that is like, you know, more thoughtful, makes you think twice, maybe doesn't uplift you in that moment, then you're running even a higher risk, which is kind of pushing artists to maybe not make music that they would want to make in many respects. And I don't know where we go. I think blockchain can help level the playing field, but in
So
terms of, you know,
it's a whole
exposure.
discussion. It's a whole
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
So part of our mission actually during Ergo Hack was that we need to start having this discussion more so than just presenting a product. So we launched a podcast called The Green Room, where we start talking to, musicians and audio professionals about value in the music industry, and, where the disparities are, where the discrepancies are, and how we can start changing that. And that's why I've started to kind of introduce a scarcity model to high resolution media, because we do have control over that media. If they want it, we have it. We have the ability to raise the price on it. So there is, with inflation, we need to raise the price. So, music has been the same price on the internet for over 20 years, basically. You buy a file for $1.50, $2, and it's been the same. And again, the artist gets almost nothing. But going back to your point about context shifts, right? People have so much information flying around their head these days, whether it's Instagram. I scroll from one thing to another thing, and suddenly I'm in a whole different world. I'm in a forest, and then suddenly I'm at a party, suddenly I'm in the city. And that, for your brain is not used to that as a human being. We only recently had that put into us. Right. And so I feel like we're going to find out very soon in neurological science that this is not good for us, right? And there's going to be, I think, massive efforts to kind of start, how do we take the technology that we've built and make it more ergonomic and integrated, so that we're not staring at a screen all the time, but yet we still have all the abilities to function with it and do stuff, right? So with music, the context shifts. It's really interesting because we worked with a charity at one point called the Alive Inside Foundation, who did a documentary on Alzheimer's and music in dementia programs. So essentially what they found out through the Music for Memory Foundation, they were doing this research. They found out that someone who has severe dementia, if you play music from their youth, like from their 20s, their prime, to them, they light up. They have social interactions like they don't usually have when they're not listening to music. They can remember things and answer questions. And this is not well understood, but they're starting to understand that music, when your brain processes it and really hears it and like experiences it, you're putting stuff in there for a very long time. It sticks around. Those mathematical patterns, if they really connect with you, you're creating a map in your mind of that sticks around pretty much until you die. And so to me, that just shows me how important music is. And, there's so many things in my life that lead me up to say like, oh, music is the most important thing out there to people, hands down. But like, that just shows me right there, even from a neurological science level. And again, I'm not a neurologist or a neurobiologist, so I'm not an expert, just a disclaimer. This is a very layman's interpretation of that, but I mean, man, that correlation might just imply causation. There's music, and then you have memory, and you have timing, and there's just a lot of factors there that just kind of sync up, So we think the high resolution experience is super important. And I think that as we automate the future, things are going to become roboticized, automated assembly lines. People are going to be working less. Hopefully, in an ideal system, people would be working less, but still having the same quality of life or better. And, if that is the case, then we are going to start, I think, moving back into an artist economy where the artists and the artisans, the people who make stuff and who create art, because AI is doing some pretty cool things with art, but it's not, creating a canvas with an immaculate painting on it that is just going to move you when you see it in person. And we might get there someday, but I think that's going to be actually the thing that drives human society moving forward is against the AI and the automation. We have to start radicalizing and creating art more and more, because it's sort of like competition at this point, right? One has to, it's like a generative adversarial network.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you put a lot of thought into how these different things work with one another before trying to come onto Ergo and begin building. It's obvious, right? And like you mentioned, it is a conversation you can go down the rabbit hole about for hours and hours and hours. I have probably two final questions for now.
Sure.
What do you feel? What other utility can be brought to blockchain now that you've seen that, hey, music makes sense to do it on here? What other things are lacking as well that you're like, hey, I'm focused on the music side of things, but I would love to see this, and this, somebody else take the initiative and probably build it on Ergo as well.
Yeah, immutable records and ledgers are useful everywhere in business. I did quality management and supply chain for a while, and I ran an ISO 9001 quality system. And in international standards, there's a lot of document control, document numbering, revision control, revision history. So the stuff we're doing digitally, that we've been doing digitally on GitHub and collaborative team development, it really started in like the 80s or even before that, in companies like Toyota, who developed like Kanban boards, like literally physical boards on the wall that you put post-its up on and write what you were doing. Now we have a digital system that does it just to make it easy, but the systems are the same, and so, we perfect these things. They just get more and more efficient and faster. And so what we see blockchain as is like a natural harmonic of like those existing systems, like the existing internet, the existing organizational systems, the existing ledgers, and it's just operating at like a new dimension. There will be, exploitation to blockchain. There will be a lot of things that come about because it's a new technology, and as new technologies expand, people learn how to use it, people learn how to manipulate it. But that's kind of like, as much as it's dangerous, it's also fun and exciting, and it's also the opportunity there to kind of shape the system yourself.
Right.
And do it before, again, bad actors come in. I think that is some of the most important things that humans can be doing with their free time right now. Personally, is getting into open source development and kind of like fixing the problems. We have these current systems, they're not quite good enough, but yet the new systems kind of are. So let's start looking at that.
So what other things apart from immutable records do you see any other real world use cases on the blockchain that would just taking out the intermediaries, middlemen, things like that? I have my own opinions about it, but yeah.
I think we'll get to a future where there's no like servers out there except for like business servers. We'll probably get to a point where everyone's kind of hosting their own content through an IPFS node. We'll probably get to a point where there's some central banking digital currency, and then everyone's generating free solar electricity and with hydroelectric whatever. We'll probably get to a point where everyone's like having a surplus of electricity and stuff, so they'll be having a thing, they'll mine it, it'll go into the network, they'll get their universal basic income. I'm hoping these are like the hopes and dreams that will move into this future. But Yeah, so immutable ledgers is like a big one, right? Because honestly, everything in the world is run on paperwork. You don't have your earbuds come from China. Those don't get sent on a ship until a paper gets filled out and gets signed by some warehouse guy that was stamped. Those were all in the box, ready to go. That gets inspected by some customs guy in the US. He says, oh, yeah, this paper is good. I'll sign it. Everything is paperwork. And digital systems, you'd be surprised at how many billion-dollar companies out there working on Wall Street still don't use Web 2.0 even, because they're working on paper systems and ledgers that have been working for them since like the 70s and 80s. And the thing about it is when you get into financial audits, like SOX audits and like ISO audits for quality systems, the more you change, the harder it is with your audits. And so generally speaking, when you're at like $1 billion revenue company and you've got a system that works, why change it? Even if it's a little slow, why change it? So
Right.
there's some challenge there. There's some challenge there for blockchain, to get involved in enterprise at all. But there's a lot of enterprise that sees the value in it, and so they're doing it. And so supply chain is a big one too, like tracking a part as it moves from point A, where it gets machined on the lathe, to point B, where it gets polished, to point C, where it gets packaged, to point D, the customer. All of that gets tracked right now, and it's all mutable on like MySQL databases and like Oracle databases. So the blockchain has so much potential there. And when you're talking about ledgers, you're literally talking about pretty much everything in the world. So
Right.
that's a lot of potential.
Yeah, it kind of feels that a lot of people would be on board with giving blockchain a try, but there's also that degree of uncertainty of, well, which one do we use, right? There's thousands. If we begin on Cardano, if we begin on, I mean, let's be honest, almost nobody knows about Ergo if we're comparing it to the top five out there, for
Which
right
is
now
sad
anyway.
because Ergo has more utility than any of them, really.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, fair launches, man. They take time, but ultimately they win out when you're looking at like potential legislation around securities laws and things like that. So like a Howey test and all that. Like Ergo's it's pretty vacuum sealed and as far as that goes. But yeah, there's kind of that thing like which one do we build on? Like there oh, Terrafell, that was in the top 10. We should probably hold off on that until there's more consolidation about universal standards of what is a great blockchain. And since blockchains are still rolling out, like in Cardano's case, they're still rolling out different um, updates and soft forks and hard forks and blah, blah, blah. It kind of feels like, okay, this isn't a completed product, which is kind of like not a good premise to start with because technology is never completed anyway. But they kind of feel like, oh, well, give it 10 years. I need to see the hype or not, and that kind of takes away from it's intimidating if you're like 50 or 60 years old. The world has always functioned in a certain way. The internet was like how you absorbed it. Like maybe midway in your life, you're like, okay, I have to get on board with this, but we're not to the point where people have to use the blockchain yet, even though it would be in their benefit to already begin adopting it early on. You get what I mean? It's kind of like the skepticism of the internet early on. Oh, why would I watch why would I listen to a baseball game um, through the internet
So
or watch a game if I could just watch it on TV or radio? And now nobody uses radio.
in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
blockchain is really best suited to enterprise industry. And this is just my opinion, but what happens in something like audio, right, where you have the need to create new instruments and the need to create new hardware. There's an industry that exists with music, but it's making like no money, right? And so there needs to be like endeavors and campaigns to bring people on. So what a good example of this is like, when you have Apple earbuds, I think, and Apple has high res audio in Dolby Atmos, and you can listen to Dolby Atmos in your AirPods but it's not really Dolby Atmos. It's like, emulated, because there's no way you're getting real surround sound out of just two little things in your ear, because Dolby Atmos is at minimum 7 speakers and then 2 subwoofers.
Okay.
And so what they do is they market like, oh, look at this new thing, Dolby Atmos. Hey, all you regular people, come and invest in this. You're going to want this. So the enterprise builds its offering with public adoption, and then it can serve industry. So again, it's like inflating a bubble really quickly, and then knowing that it's going to deflate really quickly. So just kind of building the product up in a certain way and then letting it kind of reach where it reaches. So yeah, I mean, again, like there's a difference here in like products and creations. And I think that so often we've been kind of trained in our world to look at like a musical song as like a product, rather than an experience. So yeah, there's a lot of contextual things, right? Like language is really important. And when you're dealing with smart contracts, we're going to get to a point where everyone's using smart contracts and blockchain, but no one's going to even realize it. Like people use Visa on and MasterCard, and they swipe a card and it's automatic, and they're like, cool, bye, I bought something.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. But the average person is probably not going to be like, oh, I own cryptocurrency. They're probably going to be, oh, I own whatever fiat thing is currently now instead of the US dollar, and I can trade that for whatever, or buy whatever with it. It's just like, because people need that familiarity. People need a bank account. People need insurance on their deposit. So I don't see crypto. I don't see crypto in that sense being like mass adopted by the people, but I do see a lot of tools being built on top of crypto that can be mass adopted for the people with their own kind of layer too. So
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, good point. To wrap up the conversation, I think a lot of people would like to know what is next for Swamp Audio. What is your next major milestones on this journey that you guys have finally begun, embarking on?
And it's quite the journey. There's a quote that I really like called "The journey is the destination." So, this right now is exactly what we're looking for. Wherever we end up is where we're going to want to be. But right now we're focused on building tools and standards and expanding our product. We just went into the IDO with ErgoPad and did our first round for early stakers of ErgoPad in that system. And we are doing like the support that we're seeing from the community is pretty astounding, honestly. Seeing how many people are actually interested in this idea to bring this product forward, it brings joy to my heart. And this is just the first round. We're doing another round now, and then we're going to be adding liquidity on Ergo Dex, I think, in the next 2 weeks. So our own token, Terahertz, is, like I said, we're operating a layer 2 on top of Ergo, so that we can transact a lot faster than the 2-minute block time. So the goals are to build out a tool which allows people to stream audio data, maybe even video data. I mean, I guess it's really not settled on just audio when it's developed, but to be able to basically use IPFS, interplanetary file system, kind of like you would Spotify, where an artist has their offering, you click play, and it immediately plays, and you don't have to wait for a transaction to settle. But we settle the transaction on the back end every 2 minutes. So we're looking at creating sort of like playlist functions where artists can create their NFT and stake it to a playlist, and then the fan who created that playlist can get a payout, a percentage based upon how popular that playlist is. So we're looking at all sorts of ways to connect the artist and the fan, and to create value streams between them. And again, just rather than being in the middle of them, to kind of just operate as a layer underneath them, so that they can feel safe and confident to walk upon that layer and transact.
Right.
Because they'll naturally plant their seeds into our layer. Like there is wealth like dirt is dirt, right? Dirt doesn't have any wealth, but dirt is the most wealthy thing on earth. You know, you grow food with it. It's got the nutrients. Without dirt, nothing would be here. So we have to look at like these things that we take for granted and figure out like why they're actually the best thing for us. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, yeah, sorry, that got a little metaphysical.
No, no, that actually makes perfect sense. Dirt, soil offers all the potentiality of creating, uh, prosperity essentially, right? So I guess Ergo is kind of like high quality dirt. Come
Well,
plant your seeds on it.
you know what you find in the dirt? You find gold in dirt as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So
To tie it in with the mining idea. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. Go deep enough, you'll find the rewards. You'll reap the benefits.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good way to end it. Good way to put it. So, hey, yeah, very interesting episode. We wish you a lot of luck. I'm sure the community, if I'm allowed to speak on behalf of a group of people, I'm pretty sure everybody would be is in full support of what you're bringing to the table. And I hope with this interview they also kind of understand more about kind of how the music industry functions, and also like the benefits blockchain can have not only on music but just kind of business in general, like with immutable ledgers and things like that. Because
I hope so.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you so much, Michael from Swamp Audio, guys. Check out what is the name of your website? How can people find more about the project?
Oh yeah, it's just swamp.audio. Just go to your browser, type in swamp.audio, and there we are. We also have some stuff on our GitHub. We'll be posting a lot more updates on our website in the coming 2 weeks as we launch terahertz on the DEX. That's, we got our marketing guy working tirelessly right now, making some stuff so that there's some easily digestible graphics there for people to read. So it's easy for either musicians or crypto people to understand what we're about. Thanks so much for having me on today. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing updates in the future, and maybe you'll come on the show and talk about those. So thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in. See you in the next one. Bye.